Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because I can, and I continue with The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. Now, I'll read the rest of the glossary, so there will be no actual gameplay in this episode, so if you're not interested in the bestiary and stuff, you can just skip it. Panthers. Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? I've been to Sintra to look at the queen. Pussycat, pussycat, what did you do there? Run, fool, that's not a cat but a panther. A rare variation of a traditional folk rhyme. Panthers are dangerous predators found in forests and other woodlands. They are quick and agile, and like all cats, diabolically cunning. In many less than thoroughly urbanized areas, folks still believe panthers are stranded souls of those who die in their sleep. Superstition thus holds anyone perishing in this way should be dragged to the nearest woods and left without a burial. The panther spirit of the deceased may then devour its own body, thereby passing on to the netherrealm. This belief must be eradicated by any means, for it leads to the epidemics of cholera and other contagious diseases born out of rotting corpses. Besides, it is patently ridiculous, given panthers are not necrophages and will not consume carrion of any sort. They prefer more spry and lively prey, such as deer or even humans, provided they are not ill or do not stink too badly. Panthers and their tawny-coated cousins, mountain lions, are incredibly swift and able to sneak up on their prey undetected to gain the advantage of surprise. The Beast of Beauclair, which is incidentally in the Beast's tab, which is a bit weird, but since I know he's a vampire, eyewitnesses to the gruesome monster attacks always have a hard time describing the creature in question. The beasts move quickly and often attack at night, while the witnesses are terrified and primarily concerned with fleeing for their lives. As a result, witchers quite often have no inkling of what creature they face until they find their tracks, or otherwise establish something for themselves. Such was the case with the beast tormenting Beauclair. Geralt knew it was deadly, elusive, and fiendishly clever. Everything else he heard was clearly a product of imaginations, fed by fear and of a dangerous predator. When Geralt identified the beast, he discovered it was a higher vampire, meaning one of the most difficult foes a witcher can come to face. Higher vampires are superhumanly strong and fast. They can turn completely invisible, and each comes with its own personalized set of talents and abilities perfected throughout centuries of existence. When Geralt realized he was dealing with such a creature, he swore foully and realized the rumors about the beast had not been exaggerated in the slightest. Archeospores. Looks like a flower to me, a hideous, disgusting flower. Lasco tenerbe, lost words. Archeospores look like gigantic, aesthetically unpleasing flowers with some traits of an exceptionally cruel and bloodthirsty sandewes. They are, however, far more dangerous than even the most colossal sandew. Their peculiar appearance makes them impossible to discern amidst other plants. By the time one draws close enough to realize what they are, it is often too late to flee. According to popular belief, archeospores are cursed plants growing in the soil, fertilized by the blood of the dying. They are most often found in places that in past saw pogroms, bloody rituals, and cruel murders. For the types of archeospore, 4 types of archeospore have been catalogued to date, differing from one another in terms of coloring: brown, the least dangerous; green and purple, the most dangerous. The final variant, said to have been cultivated by the mages of Ban Ard, is yellow in appearance, whose strength is similar to that of its green-colored cousins. The Toad Prince. The girl walked up to the edge of the pond. There, squatting amid the fragrant lilies and broad lily pads, she saw the most unusual sight: a small green frog with a golden crown perched on its warty head. Charmed by the curious little creature, the girl picked it up and gave it a kiss. Immediately the little frog transformed into a handsome prince. Overcome with gratitude, he asked the girl to be his wife. Folktale, author unknown. Timeless tales always carry within them a grain of truth. The legend of the Frog Prince is no exception, or at least that's what the folks of Oxenford wished to believe when they found out a monstrous toad lurked in their city sewers. The women who hunted it in search of romance and a better life, however, find that their tales had a most unhappy ending. The creature they encountered was no small sweet frog, but a bloodthirsty beast who did not only not let them in for a kiss, but instead greedily devoured them and anything else that strayed into its slime-covered lair. Slizzards. Some peasants once offered me a king's ransom to slay a slizzard, a damned hefty purse chock full of gold, but I turned them down. Coin's no good if you're dead, and a slizzard, that's no fucking forktail. Zator, one of the Crinfrid Reavers. Slizzards are often mistaken for wyverns or forktails, yet make no mistake, slizzards are nasty, particularly dangerous beasts, and confusing them for wyverns will end badly for the confuser. While a wyvern can tear apart and devour an untrained man in seconds, only a slizzard can first bake him to a crisp with a waft of fiery breath. Slizzard matriarchs. If you ever find yourself facing a monster that breathes fire, strikes with a tail tipped with venomous spines, bites with sharp teeth and swipes with even sharper claws, and tends to knock its prey to the ground with a sonic blast, then you are fighting a slizzard. With an arsenal like that, it comes as no surprise that folk often mistake those draconids for dragons, yet the experts, meaning witchers, know that slizzards constitute an entirely separate species, much smaller than the dragons and far less dangerous, with one exception. Slizzard females in mating season, or even worse, just after laying their eggs. When fighting such individuals, my suggestion is to get as far as possible from the danger as quickly as possible, preferably running at full tilt without looking back. Silver Basilisk. You want a fine pair of boots, you say? Bring me the hide of a silver basilisk, and I'll make you boots the whole world will envy. Anatole Visely, shoemaker from Beauclair. Geralt always liked looking at things that don't exist, be it a vampire with a human heart, or the last basilisk of a species that no scholar has classified. Discovering something thought not to be there to be discovered caused him a great pleasure. That is why he took an interest in a contract which at first glance seemed banal, but proved to be very intriguing. It concerned the last basilisk of the nearly extinct species Regulus platinum. The thin scales covering silver basilisks are thinner than those of their most common brethren, making them thereby easier to burn. The ignisign will then prove useful in a fight against one of their number, yet one must be especially wary of the monster's venom, which is much stronger than that found in their widespread kin. In the end, Geralt decided not to kill the basilisk, for who in his right mind would raise a sword against a living legend? Pixies. Look, pixies, we should go now. Come on, what harm can cute little pixies do to us? Last words of the two criminals who broke into the land of the thousand fables. Pixies may look like gentle, harmless creatures, yet in their case, the saying about appearances being deceiving fits all too perfectly. The pixies from the land of the thousand fables were created to protect that magic place from intruders and ensure the ducal daughters, Sylvia Anna and Anna Henrietta, did not come to even the slightest harm. Thus, whenever anyone else crossed the pixies' path, it ended badly for them, for pixies are aggressive, warlike creatures created to kill, defend, and fight till they can fight no more. Morose Golem. Long years of solitary study tend to make mages somewhat eccentric. As the years passed, lay people began to irritate them more and more. They are dense, unreliable, disobedient, and determined not to understand the gravity of the mage's work. They display emotion where they should show discipline and self-mastery. No wonder then that mages have long considered the best companions to be artificial construct they themselves bring to life, and designed to follow their rules and meet their needs. Professor Moreau was no exception in that regard. His golem was a dutiful servant and companion, in good times and bad. Moreau's golem was also an excellent guardian, massive, unyielding, and devilishly strong. All in all, he was a tough nut for a witcher to crack. Giant centipedes. Among the fascinating flora and fauna of the Duchy of Toussaint, one also encounters creatures of the decidedly unpleasant sort, such as the giant centipedes. Not only do those beasts look hideous to the eye, they can also do colossal damage to the flesh as well. I decidedly advise against them. A visit to Toussaint, one of the many guides authored by Catherine Safley. Giant centipedes are enormous insect-like monsters which can be found in many places in the world, but are particularly common in the lands, or precisely under the lands, of Toussaint. There they often dwell in close comity with Shalimars, for a sort of monster symbiosis has developed between them. The giant centipede feeds on the smaller creatures, which eat Shalimar dung. Hard chitinous armor covers nearly the entire body of the giant centipede. Sticking out from under the scarabs are rows of hooked limbs. Giant centipedes are able to burrow into the ground with shocking speed, only to appear back on the surface in another place. Once they select a target, they will circle it determinedly, trying to get close enough to deliver a blow. They attack primarily with their powerful mandibles, but they also possess glands allowing them to spew acid. Their greatest obstacle in fighting giant centipedes is their thick armor, which deflects most blows, not only from weapons but also from magical means, such as those dealt by simple spells or witcher signs. When attacked with a weapon, they will often parry the strike, and quickly reply with their own forceful counter. Thus, the best method of fighting them is to catch them in the earthen trap, keeping them from protecting themselves with their armor or burrowing into the ground. Kikimor warrior. Then the Kikimor princess summoned all of her loyal sisters, and off they went. Together they charged the enemy, trying to harm their queen. The Kikimor princess and the mountain giants, Cornelius Briggs, Dwarven Children's Fable fragment. That's actually kind of funny, because, dwarves live underground, so I guess where normally you would have a tale where, there are, like, for example, anthropomorphized creatures of the forest, a talking wolf or something. Dwarves could possibly have a tale about talking Kikimors. It is unknown exactly how Kikimors communicate with each other. Autopsies are hampered by the high toxicity of their subjects. Scholars have also established that Kikimors do not seem to possess any detectable oracles. One amateur researcher, Count de Silvares, put forth a theory in his treatise A Microscope Among Monsters, suggesting that Kikimors have a highly developed sense of smell and use airborne particles undetectable to humans to transmit information. This theory has yet to be proved or disproved. Kikimor workers. The old fool who came home all black and blue, claiming Kikimors had attacked him in the woods. What does he take me for? His mates worked him over because he had cheated at Gwent. If it had been Kikimors, he would be dead, and I'd have peace at least. Lavinia, wife of a Beauclair innkeeper. Kikimors form colonies, making them similar to communal insects such as ants. A Kikimor colony is ruled by a queen and organized into something of a social hierarchy. Kikimor workers take care of hunting food and bringing it back to the nest, while Kikimor warriors defend the nest against attackers. A worker on its own can easily be killed, even by a weak person or a child. It is rare indeed, however, to come across an isolated individual, for Kikimor workers usually move in groups of a few, up to a dozen members. The only defense against a swarm of Kikimors available to a normal person is to flee, and even that is not guaranteed to work. Pale widows. Never have I seen such a creature. It was like a giant centipede, but white, utterly white. Account of Dr. Vitorius de la Vega after the first encounter with the pale widow. This rare variety of the giant centipede dwells underground in layers and owes its name to its unusual pale white coloring. Like the more common giant centipede, its body is covered in hard chitinous armor, with numerous hooked limbs sticking out from underneath. Some scholars raise that those creatures in the laboratory conditions some scholars raise these creatures in laboratory conditions for the properties of their albumen, which make excellent base for brewing mutagenic potions. Scurvers. Thought it was just a pile of rotten meat till it started to move. Thibaut from Beauclair. Scurvers are Rotfin's larger cousins. The bodies of these hideous, vaguely humanoid creatures are covered with rotten scraps of flesh, under which lurk even more rotten muscles, stretched around a long, flexible skeleton. Scurvers, which feed on old, rotting corpses, prefer to make their hunting grounds in abandoned torture sites, forgotten graveyards, and old battlefields. They are very aggressive, and when they feed on corpses, if they come across a living person, they are likely to attack. Thus, the wandering near any of the above-mentioned places, one must be especially cautious. Scurvers usually feed underground, but sometimes, when they catch a scent of a human, they crawl to the surface in a matter of seconds and attack their potential prey. While fighting them, one cannot afford to forget about their special bony spines, razor-sharp protuberances sticking out of their skeletons. When a scurver is near death, the gases and enzymes gathered in its body cause it to explode, flinging those spines at great speed, turning them into one last deadly weapon in their arsenal. To protect oneself against the damage from those spines, one should make prodigious use of the quensine. Spotted whites. The best defense against spotted whites? Stay home and leave them alone. I actually read that already when I was dealing with the cursed spotted white. Normal whites. They say the dead like quiet. I don't know about the dead, but whites certainly do. Henry von Groth. The whites are ghastly and threatening in appearance. One should not approach them with a sword drawn or attack them unprovoked. Left alone, they present no serious danger to anyone and are far more interested in mixing noxious brews in cauldrons than in fighting. The species mainly lives around ancient burial sites, though they have also been spotted near more recently found cemeteries and wherever mass graves can be found. Whites spend winter months in a state of lethargy, very similar to human sleep. They live strictly solitary lives. In fact, it's practically unheard of for those creatures to appear in groups. Yet, when they fear their territory is threatened, and it is enough for one to step a foot in a white's territory for it to feel threatened, whites transform into very dangerous foes and even abandon their solitary ways to summon other monsters to their aid. It is a certainty that if a white finds itself in danger, it will immediately spew out an ectoplasmic solution which near instantaneously transforms into barghests. These beasts will obey the white and attack anyone it deems a foe. If one of them is killed, the white tries to replace it at once. The best strategy when fighting a white is to take out the monsters guarding it with the axis sign before attacking the white itself. Whites are resistant to poison, but vulnerable to silver. Goliath. According to legend, Goliath had once been a knight who violated his vows, for which he was punished by the Lady of the Lake. Transformed into a giant, he fled into the mountains and would only descend to the inhabited lowlands when hunger forced him to it. There's no knowing how much truth there lies in that legend, yet it is an incontrovertible fact that this dangerous giant gobbled up shepherds and sheep alike, and was so widely feared that governesses used him to scare children into eating their vegetables. Though he came across as a wild, unthinking beast, Goliath used simple tools, and any items he could use he could turn into a deadly weapon in his powerful hands. When fighting Geralt, Goliath wielded a millstone, making his every blow truly crushing. Luckily, Geralt had some experience slaying giants, and made quick work of Goliath as well, with much appreciated help of 3 knights, Milton de Peyrac Peyran, Palmerin de Lunafol, and Guliam de Lunafol. Relics. Shalimars. The Earth's innards are a home to mighty strange and fearsome beasts. Were they ever to decide to rumble up to the surface, we'd all be gutted the very first day of the invasion. Ramus Venderdrats, Mahakaman Foreman. Shalimars spend most of their lives deep underground, having no contact with the world up above. At times, however, a Shalimar will dig its way to the surface and devour any man within its reach. Some Shalimars also burrow tunnels close to the surface, collapsing buildings and causing tremors in the process. Since Shalimars are blind, they find their way by sensing vibrations and listening for sounds. Thus, the best tactic when fighting such a monster is to hurl something heavy or noisy against a nearby boulder or a wall. Then pray silently that the beast will roll towards the sound and knock itself upon striking into the obstacle. Clumsy Shalimars might seem easy targets to hit, but when even the strongest blows bounce off the thick armor plating on their backs, you realize they have little need to dodge. When threatened, a Shalimar will curl up in a ball and roll forward with tremendous impetus, becoming an unstoppable force crushing everything in its path. A Witcher's best bet is to stay out of the charging Shalimar's way and strike after its charge fails, revealing its vulnerable underbelly. A Witcher of particular cunning and agility will use the Ard sign or a bomb, Samum works particularly well, to cause the Shalimar to slam into an obstacle at full speed, significantly lowering its ability and opening the Witcher's path to victory. Trying to disorient a Shalimar in this way is a risky maneuver, but can be effective, especially when third parties are threatened. Shalimar from the Emperor of Nilfgaard. Gladiator fights in massive arenas are a popular form of entertainment in Nilfgaard. Usually the fighters are slaves, especially trained for this purpose, yet at times the arena masters pit humans against monsters. The Shalimar Geralt had to fight in the tourney grounds was a present from the Emperor to his relative, that is Anna Henrietta. It had been caught while young and prepared for this ultimate purpose by Nilfgaardian trainers. This does not mean it was tame, however. In fact, its wildness and inborn ferocity had not been dulled one whit. Like all creatures of its species, it was blind, but could unerringly pinpoint its opponent's location using echolocation. The Shalimar had thick armor and near impenetrable skin. It could also roll into a ball and charge its opponents. Its underbelly, however, was relatively vulnerable and became exposed when the charge failed. In the end, though the fight was long and difficult, Geralt defeated the Shalimar, and when the Duchess called upon him from the stands to finish the beast off, he refused to kill the creature, not wanting to take a life merely to amuse the crowd. Spriggans. I was gathering berries, as one does this time of year, when suddenly the trees shook and I saw that thing. Fragment of a story told by a woman returning from the woods. Spriggans are a subspecies of the monsters known as Leshens. One is liable to come across them in the inaccessible, unfrequented woodlands. They do not usually attack humans if unprovoked, but when irritated they can become quite fearsome, and as they possess considerable strength, they are capable of doing great damage. Their appetite is such that they can devour more flesh than an army at a wedding. Each Spriggan has mastery over plants, and is inexplicably tied to them. Thus, if someone destroys the greenery in their domain, it immediately comes to punish the disturber. The Caretaker. There are more things in heaven and earth that are dreamed of in your philosophy. Bartolomeo Dares, after trying to contact creatures from another plane and landing in an insane asylum. The Caretaker served with indifference of a golem and proved as fierce in battle as he was diligent in his labors. It felt no pain. In fact, each blow it received seemed to give it strength, as did each blow landed on Geralt with the spade it wielded as a weapon. What is more, the Caretaker was able to summon powerful spirits from the grave it has dug, and could heal itself by absorbing them. The Witcher had a hard time evading the devastating strikes of its weapon, and his only chance of wounding the creature came when it would stick its spade in the ground to draw the otherworldly energy, in an attempt to petrify its foes with fright. The being known as the Caretaker had been summoned to the Von Everec estate from another realm, making demon its most accurate designation. The Caretaker has been forced into servitude by magic means. It performed these tasks, its tasks to care for the house and protect it from intruders. It performed these pedantically, tending to the flowers, repairing the fences, tidying the yard, and murdering all intruders who set foot on the grounds. then burying their corpses in neat rows on the untended land just beyond the manor's garden bounds. The monster of Tufo. A knight-errant might manage to kill a ghoul, and a peasant with a pack of dogs can sometimes take down a bear, yet let us make one thing clear: not even the finest steel armor ever forged, or the collarbone of Saint Plegmund himself, would give a mortal man a chance of surviving a fight against the creatures that dwell deep beneath the ground. Veteran Toussaint ducal guardsmen briefing new recruits. Imagine a creature that kills men, feasts on Kikimor eggs, and digs underground tunnels so wide that they would fit the Emperor of Nilfgaard's coronation carriage along with a team of 6 horses, and now imagine that this creature digs with such force that earth quakes and houses up above tremble and collapse. Noting these symptoms, Geralt was at first unsure what sort of beast he could be dealing with, knowing only that he needed to be very, very careful. Only after he carefully examined the monster's tracks did he realize it had to be an aged female Shalamar. The monster destroying Tufo turned out to be an old Shalamar matriarch. Geralt hunted it down and fought it deep under the ground. Though blind like all members of its species, this creature could easily maneuver by sensing vibrations and noises. As long as Geralt stood quiet and motionless, he was safe. Yet if he took one step or breath too loud, the matriarch would start moving in his direction with great speed. Geralt had a very difficult time taking out this monster, whose armor could not be pierced by any of his weapons. In the end, however, he succeeded, and the monster of Tufo was no more. Wicked Witch. Once upon a time there was a wicked witch. Every day after supper she would drink a glass of freshly squeezed corpse juice. Karl Hrim, writer of children's fables. Though evil witches are often considered creatures born of overactive imaginations of fabulists and mythologists, cartoonish characters only a child would be frightened of, there are accounts of men who claim to have happened across one of those improbable beings. All these accounts agree that the witch not only did in fact eat men, but had mastered the act of cooking humans to a fine art. They are said to be particularly fond of children's liver fried in butter and served in a saffron sauce, balsamic vinegar marinated fingers roasted to a golden crisp, and yes, even freshly squeezed corpse juice. It should be noted that all of the above-mentioned witnesses who swore they saw such a witch were patients of the Elander Institute for the Mentally Ill, and thus the veracity of the testimony is highly debatable. Barghists. Shun sin, renounce foul deeds, and if evil threatens to overwhelm your will, ponder the fate of the outskirts of Vizima, remember the hideous Barghists which scoured them, and repent. Sermons for feasts and funerals by Reverend Yeoman of Tretagor. Folks of simple or superstitious minds claim that committing particularly rotten acts will bring down the wrath of the gods in the form of Barghists, phantom dogs that stalk the roads at night. If this were their origins, Barghist saints and sinners alike would need fear Barghist, for they attack both with equal ferocity. Witchers rarely believe in the gods, but they do accept that Barghists exist and are always connected with some sequence of tragic events that happened in the past. Their explanation, however, holds that Barghists result from a curse or a concentration of ill will. Banshees. Banshees howl and shriek, and if you hear their cry, you can know you'll soon join the ranks of the dead that night. Beggar from Dundare. Old gossips claim that banshees are spirits of women stuck between life and death due to a traumatic experience. Their wails and howls are considered an ill omen of the imminent inevitable death, though they are said not to attack the living themselves. Most often they appear in the form of a pale, tear-streaked woman with shriveled face, a wrinkled corpse-like body. Daphne's Wraith. During his stay in Toussaint, Geralt became involved with a curious case of gynodendromorphy, that is to say, a woman who has been transformed into a tree. When one cut into the tree's bark, it bled, and when the wind blew throughout its leaves, one could hear muffled sobs. Geralt investigated the matter and learned magic and possibly a curse was responsible for the transformation, and it surely had something to do with a certain sad episode from the woman's past. The love of Daphne's life, a knight-errant, had gone to the Witch of Lynx Crag and never returned, leaving her to wait for him forever, filled with sadness and longing. And ethereal. The human mind is as wild and unexplored a place as any land far beyond the seas. It is inhabited by manifold dangers, fears, painful memories, traumas. These lurk on the edge of our consciousness like predators waiting for the moment of weakness to reveal themselves and destroy us. The painted world created in the mind of Iris von Everec was mainly populated by figures from her memories, but also was home to dangerous predatory creatures, the embodiments of her fears. The most dangerous of these, the ethereal, invoked her greatest fear and wore the face of her husband. The ethereal resembled Orgurt in appearance, and also fought using a technique similar to his. A group of 6 such creatures lay in wait for Geralt, yet at first only one engaged him in battle. This one's death invoked the next, which was much more powerful than the first, and so it went to the end, with a stronger ethereal replacing the weaker fallen brother until all were defeated. Yet Geralt had to be careful, for the slightest amount of damage dealt to a being awaiting his turn would cause him to come alive and join his still-living comrade in the fight. In the end, the best tactic against those nightmarish beings proved to be a well-timed counterattack. The wraith from the painting. Quite often, a wraith is tied to an object, something it clung to during its life, or a location, such as the place of its death. In either case, we are dealing with the same causal agent, a strong emotional tie from which the wraith draws strength. Inigo Swan, beyond the natural world. While wandering the von Everec's abandoned estate, Geralt came into contact with a woman's wraith haunting the house. The restless spirits had mastery over the house's furnishings, and in particular over the paintings. It moved freely between the canvases, entering one and exiting through another. At first it tried to scare Geralt into giving up his search, and then, when it was clear the strategy would not work, it attacked him directly. Geralt's battle against the wraith proved very difficult, for it was fueled by rage and launched its attacks with heated aggression. Geralt was forced to move with lightning speed in order to parry its blows, without time to take a breath or launch an attack of his own. What's more, the wraith had created a bond with the paintings around it. Until the Witcher severed the tie, it would continuously regain any lost strength. The key to victory over the wraith from the painting was to focus on parrying its blows and only attack sporadically at the exactly right moments. Any attempt to attack in a flurry was always punished with a deadly counterattack. Alps. It looked like a bruxa, but that was no bruxa. Fragment of a conversation between an ealdorman of Folcoane and a witcher. Alps are vampires that resemble bruxae in appearance. They are called phantoms by some, a name which fits them well enough, for like phantoms they haunt and torment men. They usually take on a form of a woman, though they can also appear as animals. They are most often found prowling near villages. They attack at night and are most active when the moon is full. Alp saliva can make one fall asleep. And when applied to a sleeping man, can invoke horrible nightmares. Some suggest that they are a cause of legends about men who go to sleep healthy and are found in the morning white as snow, not a drop of blood in their veins. Fledders. The deceased corpse was completely mutilated. All that remained of the nose was a hole clotted with blood. One eye socket had been chewed beyond all recognition. The mandible has been torn off. Seeing this, Sergeant Devant vomited profusely, and the administration of smelling salts was required. The investigation was discontinued, and the dead attributed to a supernatural being. Fragment of a Toussaint de Calgard report. Fledders are classified as lesser vampires, though weaker than the rest of their ilk in every aspect from the physiomagic to the physiognomic. They should not be underestimated, for they are very, very dangerous. Fledders cannot be mistaken for any other creature, with their wide, toothy jaws, flat, unpleasant faces, and completely hairless, often warty bodies. These vampires mainly fight with their teeth and claws, flaying them blindly and not stopping even when their victim is already dead. Even a solitary Fledder is strong enough to take down a trained soldier. Compared to other vampires, Fledders display meager intelligence, seen most clearly in their mindless rage, which causes them to try with all their might to attack and tear to shreds any weaker being. Garracanes. Blood on the ceilings, gut on the walls, must be a Garracane. Jan of Lan Exeter, investigator and the captain of the City Watch. Garracanes, like Fledders, belong to the class of a particularly dangerous vampires whose strength exceeds that of fiends. An encounter with one of their number almost always ends in death, which is why there are not many eyewitnesses' accounts of them. From the City Guard reports written in Lan Exeter describing the attacks committed in that city in 1104 by 3 Garracanes, later killed by a certain Oliver of Goulet, Witcher, it seems that those horrible monsters do not content themselves with merely drinking the blood of their victims. The investigators concluded from the blood and guts strewn along the crime scenes that Garracanes tear their victims to shreds, and with great delight and muck about in their bloody entrails. Garracanes belong to the group of creatures known as lesser vampires. They often gather around themselves a member of other subspecies of lesser vampires, acting in such situations as the leaders of the pack. They are by and large unable to run, but can jump a great distance, and often attack their prey in that way. During combat, they usually keep their distance from their foes, trying to incapacitate them using a blast of mental energy provoking visions that beguile and disorient. Before grappling a Garracane, one should drink the Black Blood Potion and stock up on vampire oil. It should also be remembered that Samum and Moondust bombs are always effective weapons against mental attacks. Bruxa from Corvo Bianco. The Bruxa Geralt encountered and killed in self-defense at the Corvo Bianco differed from the other creatures of this sort. Firstly, it was more intelligent, capable even of articulating words in a human language without much difficulty. What's more, this Bruxa was tied to the Beast, the mysterious murderer prowling Beauclair at the time. Fighting it presented Geralt with quite the challenge. Like any other Bruxa, this one possessed strength and speed far above that of any human, could turn invisible, and could attack using a sonic wave. As is typical for all vampires, it sought to suck its victim's blood. This meant the usual defense against those creatures, the Black Blood Potion, was an effective weapon against it, as were the Moondust bombs and naturally the Witcher's trusty Silver Blade. Deathlaf von Eretane. It was horrifying to watch. That gentleman suddenly turned into a ghastly beast with claws and tore those men to shreds with the precision of a master butcher, a witness of Deathlaf's attacks. Deathlaf is a higher vampire, one of the most horrifying creatures the world has ever known. Some vampires of this sort live among men easily and inconspicuously, sometimes even gaining the respect and admiration of their community, yet even the most civilized vampire can be incredibly dangerous when provoked, and Deathlaf was far from civilized. When in his two-legged form, Deathlaf strikes in surprising and unique ways, and one must be extremely alert and attentive. His razor-sharp claws, wielded with great strength and precision, are his chief weapons, yet he can also wield weapons of human devising with extraordinary skill. Like all higher vampires, Deathlaf can turn into fog and envelop opponents. When fighting a vampire in this form, one must watch out for magic puddles or attacks from the air. When wounded, Deathlaf tends to assume his winged form, using the powerful appendages to stun his foes near effortlessly. One must remember that higher vampires are immortal creatures and thus do not fear for their lives while fighting, meaning that they take every risk. They are able to turn invisible and can regenerate strength during combat. All in all, they are supremely difficult foes, even for a witcher. Okay, I also have a bunch of books that I haven't read. So let me get to it. Okay, I read that. This is the letter to Detlef. Letters naming... Oh, this is actually longer than the original version of that. Count Crespi called himself a knight, letters naming the beast's targets. Count Crespi called himself a knight, but spat in the face of chivalry. That is why he should not die with a sword in his hand, but atone for this dishonor on the town pillory. He was a rogue, and he should die a rogue's death. You did well with Count Crespi, he got what he deserved. Now it's time for Ramon Dulac. That idiot thought he was smarter than a new penny, always issuing his judgments, which broke people's futures and necks. He was a fool and should die like a fool, alone with no weapon, in a dark alley with a broken neck. Count Lacroix committed the basest of acts out of his love for money. He tore to shreds the hearts of those who trusted him. That is why you will cut him to pieces and attach the coin pouch accompanying this letter to his body. Your penultimate victim is Milton de Peyrac-Peyran. He who should have shown valor in defense of the innocent turned out to be the greatest coward of the Beauclair knighthood. That is why he must die like a coward. You will kill him during the tournament, when the hare hunt commences in the ducal gardens. Milton will be the hare. He will escape like a coward. Then you will hunt him down and kill him, just like a hunter kills a coward. A journal. Sienna gave me a card today with headless, bloody stained people on it. I asked why she had drawn it. The princess answered that it was a scene from nightmares that have been haunting her since she can remember. It is true that Sienna awakes with a scream each night, unless she is sleeping in the same bed as Anarietta. Okay, this was read to me actually, so I don't need to read that, because Geralt read that out loud. The lizards through the ages. For many years it was erroneously believed that the lizards were simply wyverns in their highest state of development. One scholar whose completion of academic course of study must have been a result of no small miracle, heatedly defended this point of view in the scientific work, the title of which I shall mercifully withhold. His main line of reasoning was an absurd and completely off-mark parallel between the development cycles of a lizard and Pieris Bestiary, also known as the cabbage butterfly. A lizard, claimed the author, is nothing but a fully mature wyvern that has developed fire glands. Utter rubbish. Let it be known once and for all that Charles Volin is a filthy foopdoodle and an uneducated knucklehead. A lizard is not by any means the same as a wyvern. Okay, I think I read that. A code duello. Noblemen, presented below is a set of rules for dueling which every self-respecting gentleman should follow, although the nature of an honorable agreement, failure to respect them shall bring infamy and shame to the name of the dueller, and exclude him from any and all respectable social circles. The code applies throughout the whole of the Duchy of Toussaint. The parties present their seconds. Each of the parties is entitled to 1 second. The parties decide whether the duel ends with first blood, or whether one of the parties surrendered. Let it be remembered that in Toussaint, by the order of Her Enlightened Highness, duels fought till last blood are punished by immediate imprisonment. The challenge party selects the weapons for the duel. The challenger is obliged to accept the choice of the challenge party. The parties duel according to the rules agreed upon. The seconds ensure proper course of the duel. When the duel is over, the seconds announce the winner and the loser. Note, it is strictly forbidden to put forth any claims, blood revenge included, based upon a defeat in a duel. The duel is commonly regarded as an instance putting a definite end to the dispute. Of fire and stone, Sfera Mundi is divided into 4 elemental planes: the plane of earth, the plane of water, the plane of air, and the plane of fire. Earth and water together form our planet, around which circulates air. Above air stretches the ether, fiery air in short, fire. Past fire lies the subtle sidereal heavens, known as the firmamentum, which are of spherical nature. This is where the erratica sidera, drifting stars, and fixa sidera, fixed stars, reside. The elemental planes are inhabited by creatures which can be summoned by the use of magic. They are gnomes, sylphs, salamanders, and ordinates. All of them belong to a category known as elementa, or elementum in singular. Journal of Research into Archaeospores. I have stumbled upon an extremely curious species, the venomous Archaeospore. So far I have managed to distinguish 3 of its varieties, distinguishing it by color: green, yellow, and finally black, which not only exhibits the most aggression, but also shows the extraordinary ability to pollinate plants near instantaneously. My research into the Archaeospores continues. I think I've reached a point where my observation no longer is enough to bring satisfying results. The species attacks mainly using the mandible located in the center of its flower, although when highly threatened, it might also spit toxic fluid. I was also able to discover Archaeospores are particularly sensitive to fire, which may prove a useful piece of information regarding how to neutralize them if necessary. I have made up my mind. Tomorrow I shall try to obtain a sample of the fluid. I have already began preparations. Van Gort's amazing anti-fledder stratagem. Fledders are vile and unsophisticated variety of a vampire. They are unable to run properly, cannot bear direct sunlight, and generally none too wise. Some fledders hunt alone, whereas others prefer to attack in groups. Perhaps this is a matter of instinct. Having sensed blood, they assess the size of their victim, and if necessary summon their kin. The only strong suit of those leeches is their ability to leap forward towards a potential victim. Fighting a fledder is no different than fighting any other kind of bloodsucker. Apart from the obvious means such as garlic, buckthorn, and sunlight, a hunter should stock up on silver. A little torch might prove useful as well. Kikimores, truths and myths about the insidious insectoids. Observation has shown that Kikimores are the most organized and hierarchical of the post-conjunction insectoids. Their workers follow the orders of warriors. They are all subjects to the queen, which seems to control the behavior of all of the swarm, even though she remains hidden deep underground. Considering the size of the species' cerebral ganglia, which functions as their brain, one might hypothesize that Kikimores possess a sort of a hive mind, making them similar to ants. Alps, Bruxe's dangerous cousins. In the course of my research into Bruxei, I have stumbled upon a certain inconsistency that in no way corresponds with what we already know about those dangerous vampires. My investigations have revealed that these seemingly erroneous accounts are in fact describing an Alp, not a Bruxa. It is an extraordinary discovery, a true milestone in the classification of those monsters. Even though legends tell these vampires turn into pitch-black hounds or venomous toads, personally I do not believe an Alp is capable of such polymorphy. However, it is almost certain that similarly to a Bruxa, an Alp may transform itself into a beautiful woman. The ability allows the species to blend seamlessly into crowds. To think I have passed such a monster completely unawares, fascinating. One of the fundamental differences between Alps and Bruxei is their fighting style when in the form of a vampire. Alps possess the ability to turn into a fog, which allows them to move noiselessly and attack by surprise. Most likely this is the root of the most common name the folk have given them: fleetlings. The Last Basilisk of Its Kind, a study in ecology by Boris de Silvares. Based on my observations, I have concluded all species, be they plant, animal, or even insect, are inextricably intertwined with one another. It is no mere coincidence that the felling of the beechwoods and the vanishing of Rose, who in them once dwelled, led to the disappearance of the sterling basilisk as well, the principle even holds true for ladybirds. For the benefits of learning, I conducted the following experiments. I eradicated all the aphids in the palace cabbage patch using a lye solution. Within a few weeks, all the ladybirds once present in that patch, and they were hundreds, migrated to a neighboring field. A simple experiment, yet it gave incontrovertible proof of my hypothesis. On hunting basilisks. I think I read that. What else is there? Gwent, a history. Gwent, for many a diverting game of cards, for others a noble pursuit, for some a crippling addiction which devours their every coin in every waking moment. These last can be found most frequently among dwarves, the game's inventors and most passionate devotees. Their devotion extends to Gwent paraphernalia, its cards most of all, which they craft with great care and skill. In fact, cards painted by dwarven masters are often considered miniature works of art. In times past, they devoted equal attention to whittling the clubs which the contestants once kept at their sides to bash one another over the head in the case of an argument. As brawls grew less common, the clubs became implied threats more than used weapons, and eventually fell into disuse and near oblivion. Today, Gwent players can be found almost everywhere, from Skellige Isles, where the game was introduced by the druid Ermion, to the Northern Realms in the Nilfgaard Empire. In Gwent, the play of cards mimics the duel of two armies. The playing field is divided into two parts, each split into 3 rows. Nearest to the center are the units who fight in close quarter, behind them archers and other such ranged attackers, and further back machines and creatures used for siege purposes. Both players wield cards made up of minimum 22 unit cards and a maximum of 10 special cards, and each must also contain a leader card. The player who wins tosses a coin. Originally, the dwarf whose wife had the longest beard plays first. Okay, interesting. Each player draws at random 10 cards from the deck, and then is allowed to redraw 2 of those before laying the cards begins. Each round is won by the player who has played the cards of the greatest value. The first to achieve 2 victorious rounds wins, meaning a maximum of 3 rounds is played. The winner's prize is agreed upon by the players before each match. Most often the wager is a bounty of coin or a rare card. The heart of the player's armies, the unit cards, come in 3 types: close combat units, ranged combat units, and siege units. Each such card is assigned a strength rating and may additionally possess special abilities. There are also special cards which have no strength rating, but instead influence the course of the game in 2 ways. In other ways, unit cards depicting famed heroes not only usually bring high strength ratings, but they also have the added benefit of ignoring the workings of all special cards. These are the rarest and most coveted of Gwent cards. Most frequently they must be won from top players or purchased at great price from collectors. The classic Gwent is divided into 4 factions: the Northern Realms, the Nilfgaardian Empire, Monsters, and the Scoia'tael. The history of the fortress of Dun Tin, as chronicled by Le Papillon. During the visit to the court of the king of Nazair, Waltrius the Brawny fell madly in love with the king's daughter, the beautiful Hildgund, who was already promised to the prince from Metina. Waltarius, paying no heed to these politically inspired marriage plans, captured the prince's heart, and together they ran off to Toussaint. The prince from Metina, unable to let such an affront pass, followed the star-crossed lovers, yet Waltarius was renowned for his courage and might, and thus slew the adversary with ease. Then he and his beloved returned to his family estate at Dun Tin. To his dismay, it turned out that his brother, Bislavius, had merely had nearly led the estate to bankruptcy while Valtarius had been in Nazair. Valtarius threw his brother into the dungeon, and as befits a self-respecting nobleman, embarked on a nightly expedition. Unfortunately, his young wife, Hilgund, tortured by her solitude, freed Vislavius and became his lover. When Valtarius returned and realized he had been cuckolded, he murdered them both in a fit of passion and despair. Then he sat down and wept, and wept, and wept. A Guide to the Vineyards of Toussaint, the Sans-Retour Valley. While in the stunning Duchy of Toussaint, one should not forget to visit Castel Ravello, whose grapes lent their vibrant flavor to wines such as the Everlus, Fiorano, Pomino, and the famous SS. Should white wine be one's beverage of choice, I wholeheartedly recommend the excellent offering of the two fiercely competing vineyards, Coronata and Vermentino. If one seeks Beauclair white, popular in the north, one should seek out the Castel Torsicella vineyard, which produces and exports it. Unfortunately, a severe economic crisis has led to the bankruptcy of several distinguished vineyards, such as the Corvo Bianco, known as Vin Crebin in the elder speech, the Supreme Supremento, and Tufo. Let us hope each and every one of them finds a passionate new owner who will restore them to their former glory. At the Blesher Valley, for those who find the wines of the Sans-Retour Valley a little too dull, I strongly recommend the lesser known but still outstanding brands produced in the Blesher Valley. Let us start with the amazing Côte de Blessure produced at the Pomerol vineyard. I particularly recommend the 1260 to 1263 vintages with their distinctively rich flavor. Looking elsewhere, the nearby Zubaran Castle offers dry Castel de Neuf, whereas Nuragus and Saint-Clair, located in the northern parts of Toussaint, specialize in red wines and jointly produce and export the wine known in the north as Toussaint Red. Exquisite rose wine could also be once found at Castel Dacia, but ever since its owner tragically passed away, the vineyard has fallen into decay. Curious customs of Toussaint. Where have all the heroic and selfless knights gone? Are the truly noble, like Ramon of Guichon or Martinus de la Paque, a thing of the past now? Though they maintain a facade of independence and altruism, the knights-errant of Toussaint of our day are paid, and by the Duchess herself. So I ask, is that noble? Is that dignified? Should a knight or a nobleman, after all, receive payment for his noble deeds? Is he but a mercenary or pardoned by Nazairi, a ploughing witcher? Shouldn't the tears of joy of a rescued damsel suffice as a reward? I simply cannot understand it. To paraphrase the weighty words of the wise René de Hospitalier, such fools, those Toussaintans. Master Pharamon's thoughts on the elven architecture. Nowhere else in the world can one find better preserved relics of the glory of the Enseed. Naturally, by the entire world, I in fact mean the areas that have entered man's jurisdiction. Toussaint's architecture obviously could not hold the candle to the wonders of Dalblatana. This is in no way meant to detract from the glory of the ruins of Termes, the old amphitheater of Antrak, the once-time summer residence of Toussaint kings. More than any of these, however, it is the palace which captures the eyes with its spacious terraces, seemingly enclosed by open-work exedras, with rows of intricate tracery and pinnacle crowned with spiked croquettes. One might admire them through legions of ogival windows, the terraceries of which are often decorated with floral ornaments, so typical for the culture of the Enseed. The style is typically prominent, is especially prominent in its buttresses and niches. Hellhounds, harbingers of the end. Some monsters are born out of necessity, not because they are cruel, but because they have to defend themselves. For them it is hunt or be hunted. Others are simply a mistake of nature, beasts brought to life by an evolutionary hiccup, so to say. Both these sorts of monsters we are able to fight, but there are also monsters born of sin. Wherever there is cruelty and envy, wherever earth has been drenched in blood and rocks soaked in suffering, there the hellhounds have their home, and as their cruelty spreads, so too shall these monsters. They are a reflection of us, and to defeat them would mean to defeat ourselves. All that is left is to wait until we are torn to shreds by the hordes of those demonic dogs. Forgotten species, the protofledder. If you take a fledder and magnify all of its primitive traits, you will get a protofledder. This beast, the fledder's distant ancestor, arrived here from a parallel sphere centuries past, yet unlike the fledder, has remained untouched by any post-conjunction evolutionary process. In our time, protofledders are extremely rare, the more suitably adapted fledders having taken over their niche in our biosphere. Protofledders are thus lesser vampires. Their massive wide jaws constitute their main weapons, their sharp claws coming in a close second. Similarly to their more developed cousins, protofledders rely on their instincts rather than their intelligence, and are quite sensitive to the scent of blood. All the usual means of fighting vampires, such as vampire oil, black blood, and silver weapons, apply to them as well. Okay, so that's all of it. And that leaves the character tab. Anna Henrietta. If this world has ever known a ruler who has enjoyed the absolute admiration of her subject without the need for systematic repression or a particularly cruel hangman, it was without a doubt the sovereign duty of Toussaint and Duchess Anna Henrietta. Called Anarietta by those who know her well, she was the widow of the late lamented Duke Raymond and his one-time lover, a one-time lover of a very famous and talented artist who would prefer to remain anonymous. A few years prior, when the Witcher and his band of friends were visiting Toussaint, Anna Henrietta had the pleasure of meeting Geralt of Rivia. When a mysterious beast began attacking her courtiers, the Duchess knew exactly whom to summon. While searching for the beast, the Duchess proved that when the need arose, she was able to throw off the chains of convention and get her hands dirty with direct action alongside the Witcher, even if she had to do so in a state of relative dishabille. Surprisingly enough, the Duchess handled the rigors of the trail as adroitly as she did those of the palace audiences. Geralt quickly saw how, even stripped of her sumptuous gown and wrapped in a coarse cloak, Anna Henrietta remained the same confident and tenacious ruler as ever. Yet then again, this should not have come as a surprise, for Toussaint's court on a daily basis hosts battles of cutting remarks, malicious half-truths and bold-faced lies that were just as fierce as any fought with a sword and a cannon. Wait, are there cannons? I don't think they discovered black powder yet in the world of The Witcher. No, wait, that's stupid. Obviously they did, because I'm using bombs. But still, were cannons mentioned anywhere? I don't recall that. The Duchess was an unchallenged master of those courtly warfares, and the Witcher had the chance to make use of that expertise. If Geralt thought the tales of her illustrious grace's implacable wrath were exaggerated, he quickly was shown how greatly he was mistaken. As soon as Anna Henrietta learned the vampire had not only escaped, but has also threatened the life of her sister, she flew into a rage that precluded all discussion. She presented matters very clearly. Geralt was to complete his contract and bring her Detlef's head on a silver platter. Oberon. Oberon Muiterach, also known as the King of the Elders, was a ruler of the far-off land of Tir Nalia, the world which is home to Avalach and the Wild Hunt. He died being poisoned by Eredin Breakglass, who then declared himself king. At the time of his death, Oberon has been exhausted and embittered by over 650 years of living. Barnabas Basil Fawlty, the majordomo of Corvo Bianco, was a gentleman if there ever has been one. His whole life has been he had served as distinguished nobles, the Niebli family, for example, or the Admiral Ropoli for another, for he would never tolerate an employer who detracted from his personal dignity, since Barnaba Basile remembered the times of Monsieur Beaulieu and Baron Rossel. He was a wellspring of anecdotes about the vineyard's past. He knew every corner and every secret of Corvo Bianco. An excellent administrator, he offered a wealth of good advice concerning the modernization and management of the estate. Geralt could not have hoped for a better help. One could even say that by entrusting Corvo Bianco to the hands of that marvelous mayordomo, Anna Henrietta had given the Witcher the most beautiful present he had ever received, for a home without someone capable to care for it is no home at all. Bootblack. The young bootblack, whose name Geralt never learned, was an extremely charming scamp in that cheeky, lovable rascal, street urchin sort of way. He also demonstrated striking entrepreneurial flair, so much so that in fact it got him into trouble at times. Geralt saved him in one such scrape by fending off a group of men intent of giving him a thorough tanning. The bootblack had done his share to deserve this, having spilled wastewater in the front of the shop every day in an attempt to muddy more boots and drive more customers his way. Casimir Bassi. In a strange sequence of events, Geralt found himself participating in the robbery of the Borsoris auction house in Oxenfurt. How this came about is a fascinating story which must be left for another time. Let us here focus on a few facts. The Witcher was tasked with putting together a crew of expert thieves and break-in artists. One of the candidates was a certain Casimir Bassi, a demolitions expert who cut his teeth in the mines of Mahakam. Damien de la Tour. One of the people Geralt had encountered at Beauclair Court was Captain Damien de la Tour, the captain of the Ducal Guard. He was absolutely and unconditionally, to say unthinkingly would be unfair, yet not entirely inaccurate, devoted to his position, and worshipped the ground the Duchess walked on. If you want my personal opinion, he was most definitely besotted with her. He came across as a typical soldier, i.e., a thick-head lackey who, seeing Geralt, immediately decided he must prove who had the most massive unmentionables. Geralt treated this challenge with dispassionate superiority, yet accepted it nevertheless, and in doing so earned himself another enemy. After he blooded himself side by side with the Witcher, Damien decided that the White Wolf was actually an altogether decent fellow who only wished to help. One could say that they shook hands and made up, in their hearts at least. Detlav von Eretain. Milton's murder was very swift. Even with the years of witchering under his belt, Geralt could barely keep up with him. Soon it became clear that the killer was as clever as he was fast, by entering an old warehouse where he set a trap for Geralt. In this way, Geralt had his first face-to-face encounter with the Beast of Beauclair and discovered it was a higher vampire named Detlav. A fight immediately ensued, which might have ended very badly for the Witcher had he not been saved in the nick of time by an old friend, Regis, who had put a stop to the battle. After that, Detlav fled in a puff of fog. When Geralt went to Oriana's residence with the Duchess, he was certain Detlav was somewhere far away, safe in Regis's care. He was wrong, as he found while watching both vampires stroll into the room, his surprise quickly turning to irritation. In the conversation that followed, the Duchess had no idea that she was talking to the murderer she so wished to have slain. In fact, the Beast of Beauclair even came off as charming. Afterwards, Geralt set off for Duntinne, but not before first extracting a promise from Regis to keep Detlav at a safe distance this time. At Duntinne, Geralt was dragged into a fight against the bandits with considerably superior forces at their disposal. There's no knowing how it might have ended, but had the proverbial cavalry not ridden to the rescue, birds in service of Geralt's vampire friends have been following him the whole time. Thanks to them, at the battle's pivotal moment, Detlav and Regis appeared to fight at his side. Believing that he was battling the men responsible for his beloved's kidnapping, Detlav killed with unseen passion. He only stopped when there was not a being left on the battlefield giving out least sign of life. Upon learning that the woman he loved was using him for her own ends, Detlef lost all the will to keep on living. The only thing left to him was a longing for vengeance, blind, unrestrained vengeance. Detlef issued a clear ultimatum. Sienna was to meet with him alone and explain everything. If she failed to do so, Beauclair would be washed away with blood. No one had any doubts that Detlef meant exactly what he said. Emil Regis Rochelek Tertiev Godfroy. Geralt chased Sir Milton's murderer with mad intensity. How this chase ended stands as a clear witness to the fact that Geralt was facing a highly dangerous foe. The killer had lured Geralt to an old warehouse where he'd set a trap for him. A fight ensued, and at the crucial moment, Geralt was saved by Regis, a higher vampire and an old friend. Here I must explain that years ago, Regis had joined Geralt's band of fellow travelers, of which I was a proud part, and set off with us in search of Ciri. Together we lived through many fascinating adventures, and Regis proved himself a loyal friend, the kind you can trust with your life. Sadly, the expedition ended tragically for Regis. He was killed by Vilgefortz, who reduced him to nothing more than a wet stain. Hence the Witcher's immense surprise encountering his old friend. After all, he had seen Regis die with his own eyes. But the thing is that this was not Regis's final death, not even his first. As a young man, Regis had already been a bit of a free spirit and overindulged in the drinking of blood. This lifestyle led him to being butchered by angry villagers. Regenerating from this took him 50 years, or nearly no time at all for an immortal. When he was back in full health, he kicked the habit of human drinking for good. For years, we had all thought that he was gone forever, yet there he was standing right in front of Geralt in the dockside warehouse. Regis explained that he had regenerated and come to Toussaint to find Detlef, a friend. Such were the dramatic circumstances bringing Regis and Geralt together again in Beauclair. They did not have long to enjoy their reunion, however. They could hear others approaching, and Regis, not wanting to risk another encounter with angry humans, agreed to meet back up with Geralt at the cemetery, where he had made an altogether comfortable temporary home for himself. Geralt had found the Mere Losancholan cemetery and the crypt where Regis had not only lived, but had also managed to set up a well-equipped alchemist's workshop. They began to confer. Regis explained that he believed his friend had become implicated in some sort of serious trouble. When they figured out they had overlapping goals, they decided to join forces and together seek out the vampire Detlef, better known in the duchy as the Beast of Beauclair. Geralt also learned how it was that Regis had returned to the world of the living. He had been helped by none other than the very one they sought, Detlef. In the light of this, Regis insisted they find a peaceful solution to the Detlef problem. Geralt and Regis decided that aid was needed to find Detlef, a certain potion called Resonance. To brew it, Regis needed some bodily tissue from an object of their pursuit. Luckily, Geralt had earlier found a dismembered hand belonging to the murderer. Another ingredient needed to brew the resonance were saliva or salivary glands from a spotted white. Having discovered such a creature resided nearby, Regis sent the Witcher to hunt it down. Geralt's encounter with the white left him with the ingredient Regis needed to brew the resonance. Once he had delivered, however, he had learned that there was still one thing missing: the blood of a higher vampire. Geralt thought that this would prove no trouble, until Regis explained that only the blood of a vampire in a highly aggravated state would do. Thus they would need to invoke maddening bloodlust in Regis, who had abstained from this vampiric vice for years. Regis brought Geralt to Tesham Mutna. This grim place had been used by vampires ages ago to raise humans like cattle. Geralt said later that the air in the place smelled of pain and fear. Regis could not vouch for how he would handle the upcoming ordeal, and had Geralt lock him up in a hanging cage, from which he was to watch as Geralt butchered. Having placed bait to lure out monsters, Geralt began his slaughter. Blood flowed at Teshamutna once again, and Regis nearly went mad with desire. In the end, two friends came to possess the blood of a higher vampire in the state of aroused fury. Geralt imbibed the resonance potion which Regis had prepared, allowing him to see a fragment of the day Detlef had committed the most recent murder. The trail led the friends to the shuttered-up toy shop where Detlef had been staying. Sadly for our heroes, they did not find Detlef home. They did not leave empty-handed, however. After searching the shop, Geralt found a letter which revealed that Detlef was being blackmailed. The blackmailers had kidnapped his lover, Reneved, and threatened to torture her if he did not do what they said. Thus, Detlef had killed the targets that they had designated. After a short consultation, Geralt and Regis decided to split up. Regis was to wait for Detlef, while Geralt would go to Anna Henrietta and report on the investigation's progress. In their pursuit of the blackmailers, Geralt and Anna Henrietta found themselves at a private residence used for meetings of the Mandragora, an exclusive club of the Boheme of Toussaint. The residence owner turned out to be a woman named Oriana. To the Witcher's great displeasure, later that evening they were joined by Regis in the company of Detlef. In the conversation that ensued, Geralt gathered Regis and Oriana were old friends. The entire conversation had a rather surreal nature, seeing how the Duchess had no idea that she was speaking to the dreaded beast himself. Its key outcome was the conclusion that the blackmailers were holding Detlef's lover at a place known as Duntin. Geralt had put Regis aside, and they conferred briefly. Geralt was firmly against revealing the information to Detlef. To his thinking, that could lead to serious trouble. I must say, I agree with the Witcher's reasoning. When a higher vampire loses his self-control, trouble always ensures. Bloody trouble. Geralt went to Duntin alone, leaving Regis behind to watch for Detlef. Or such was the plan, but life has a habit of making mockery of men's plans. The vampires kept tabs on Geralt's progress throughout the use of avian allies, and thus were the instant he found himself in dire straits. They reacted at once. Soon, Duntin was drenched in blood. Whoa, that was a long entry. Evelyn Gallo. To rob a vault, one must first open armor-plated doors and secret away mounds of loot. First and foremost, however, one must need get inside the building containing said vault. To accomplish this, Geralt could use the help of a certain Evelyn Gallo, a circus performer very famed throughout the north, and who, it seemed, used her considerable talents for less than law-abiding purposes as well. As is often the case in life, Evelyn was willing to help, but only in exchange for a favor. The Witcher had to save her circus troupe from humiliation. He duly performed the required feat, and the limber elfess then joined the break-in crew. Evelyn Gallo performed as tasked and guided Geralt and his accomplices to the auction house. Yet as soon as the haste stopped going according to plan and Redanian soldiers surrounded the auction house, she shimmied up the chimney and was never seen by Geralt again. Ewald Borsodi. When he found himself witnessing the Battle of Brothers, Geralt chose to stand by his partner, Ewald, and with their combined strength they defeated Horst and his bodyguards. Ewald then repaid Geralt in the worst way possible. He tried to cheat him by keeping Maximilian's house for himself. Luckily, the Witcher kept a clear head, and instead of slaughtering Ewald at once, he proposed a compromise both sides would find acceptable. Their paths parted soon afterwards, as Ewald left to manage the family fortune, and Geralt returned to the path of a Witcher. Gaunt rode in. Master Mirror. Geralt had escaped a great many predicaments, sometimes of his own doing and sometimes aided by others. One of the stranger helping hands was that extended to him by Master Mirror. The Witcher was on an Ophiri ship, held captive and bound for a date with the gallows. When out of nowhere in came Master Mirror, he reminded the Witcher of their first meeting, when he helped Geralt find Yennefer in White Orchard. Now he was offering help as well, this time for a price. In exchange for freeing Geralt from the ship, he demanded that Geralt meet him at a certain crossroads. When the Witcher agreed, a strange mark appeared on his face. It was as though Master Mirror had put a stamp on him to show that they had entered into a pact, a suspicion later confirmed beyond all doubt. Counter Odim explained that their mutual acquaintance, Olgierd von Everec, had entered into a strange pact. Their deal stipulated that Odim would have to grant von Everec 3 wishes, yet he could not do so on his own, having to call upon the services of a proxy, and who better to provide such an assistance than a Witcher? And since Odim made agreeing to be a proxy a condition for receiving help off of the Ophiri ship, Geralt had little choice but to agree. Master Mirror appeared once again, and once again suddenly out of nowhere as usual, after Olgierd proclaimed the first 2 of his wishes. Mirror told Geralt of a way to show Olgierd's brother the time of his life, even though this life has in fact ended years earlier. He equipped Geralt with von Everec blood and the knowledge of how to summon Vlodimir's ghost. Just as Odim had managed to collect a vial of von Everec blood was never made clear, but then again, burning question marks hang over everything this strange figure did. Master Mirror made an appearance at the wedding Geralt attended with Shani and the ghost of Vlodimir, who inhabited Geralt's body, so that they may enjoy one last night of earthly revelry. When the midnight struck, Vlodimir was unsurprisingly in no mood to abandon the pleasure of the Witcher's flesh, yet Master Mirror intervened to put an immediate and cruel end to Vlod's stay among the living. Geralt later told me the cries of torment Vlod's ghost made haunted his dreams for months to come. Geralt came away from his meeting with Professor Shakeslog, knowing how to outfox Master Mirror. The demonic packmaker could be lured into a wager, win it, and he would be defeated once and for all. Geralt soon discovered Professor Shakeslog's words were true. Master Mirror could indeed be defeated at his own game. Geralt made a bet with him, wagering everything on one battle of wits, and won. By solving the Master Mirror's riddle, he drove the demon from our dimension, though I fear he may yet return. His kind always returns. Gales. Intelligent, composed, and endowed with massive charisma, Gales enjoyed the respect and trust of the inhabitants of the Enel world, as well as that of the previous ruler, Oberon Muirsetach. For this reason, Gales not only retained his high-ranking position after Eredin took power, but also became one of the new king's most powerful allies, acting as a viceroy while the Eredin travelled at the head of the Wild Hunt. Though Gales was one of the most influential of the Enel, power had never been his driving aim. According to Avalach, his loyalty and sense of right and wrong constituted a weakness that could be used, possibly to tip the scales of the final battle. As predicted, Gales acted out of loyalty to the former king, and withdrew his support of Eredin once he had learned the truth about Oberon's death. This momentous act portended important ramifications for the outcomes of the coming battle. Guillaume de Lunafol was the very model of a knight-errant, the placard boy for Toussaint, if you will. When Geralt first met the young man, he was valiantly tilting at a windmill, which, to be fair, turned out to be a ferocious giant. Getting himself into trouble clearly counted among Guillaume's favorite hobbies. The second time Geralt met him, He had to rescue a knight from an enraged Shalimar, trying its best to rip him to shreds in a packed arena. Wounded yet grateful, Guillaume asked the Witcher to meet him about a very urgent matter. The matter turned out to be, as matters wont in Toussaint, an affair of the heart. Guillaume was tormented by unrequited love for the Duchess's lady-in-waiting, Vivienne de Tabry. He suspected the frigidness and distance must be the result of some malicious curse. Geralt, a professional curse-breaker, naturally took on the contract. To get the chance of an audience with Lady Vivienne, he had to take the wounded Guillaume's place in the knight's tourney. The Witcher determined Vivienne was indeed afflicted by a curse, and had been since before she was born, a dark malediction which caused her to transform into a bird every night. Geralt offered to try to take the curse, Geralt offered to try to cure this cumbersome condition. He reported back to Guillaume on what he had learned. Guillaume rose to the occasion and offered to take the curse upon himself in order to free Vivienne from it. Guillaume convinced Vivienne to undergo the ritual, which would transfer the curse to him. According to Geralt, once transferred, the curse's effects would be weakened, but he would not be able to make any guarantees concerning the young knight's fate. As soon as he had performed the ritual, Vivienne felt the curse had been lifted. As for Guillaume, he did not notice any significant side effects. Horst Borsodi, owner of the most famous auction house in all of the north, was a snob and a buffoon. He looked down his nose at Geralt from the very first moment they met, and when he heard he had brought the Witcher to him, he heard what had brought the Witcher to him, he had his men toss him out and beat him. To say that their relationship started on the wrong foot would thus be putting it very mildly indeed. It came as no surprise then that when Geralt chose to stand by his partner Evold in their final showdown between the two brothers. With their strength combined, they defeated Horst's higher muscle. A few moments later, Evold killed his hated brother in a spectacularly cruel fashion. It was later said that none walked behind the once rich and mighty Hord Borsodi's casket, and none shed a tear upon his grave. Hugo Hoff. Geralt needed someone who could scale the glass-smooth wall of a tower abutting the Borsodi's auction house. One of the few capable of this was Hugo Hoff, alias Beef Patty, a halfling with countless break-ins and robberies under his belt. Geralt was told to look for him in Oxenfurt, whose seedy tavern served as a watering ground for students and criminals alike. Iris von Everec. When Geralt visited Olgierd von Everec to hear his third and final wish, he had learned the rough and rowdy ataman had once been married. At some point he had left his wife, however, and gave her a violet rose as a parting gift. Geralt's task was to find that rose somewhere in the von Everec's abandoned estate. When he arrived there, he discovered that the estate was haunted by a malicious wraith tied to Olgierd's wife, Iris, who had died of loneliness years prior. Her rage and remorse now filled the former house with evil energy. Geralt gathered up Iris's remains and buried them in the manor's garden. He did it both out of simple human decency and of cold calculation, for he knew that this act would calm her unsettled spirit and lead him to the violet rose. During the funeral, a now quieted Iris appeared to Geralt and took him on a journey to a world which existed only in her mind. This painted world consisted of her fears and memories, which Geralt now had to confront. Iris von Everec's memories first recalled happy days spent in Olgierd's company, then became darker and darker. In fact, even the sunny ones had an ominous cloud hanging over them, an uneasy feeling of something horrible that would soon happen. Iris von Everec had been a sensitive woman, and noticed subtle changes in her husband's behavior. She had lacked the courage, however, to delve into their true cause. Olgierd von Everec's heart had turned to stone, turning him into a monster. Iris hated what her husband had become, but could not stop loving him. The couple endured together in a painful cohabitation until Olgierd ended it by abandoning his wife. Iris never came to terms with that separation, and could not in fact even bring herself to read her husband's farewell letter, yet the violet rose he had given her upon leaving she kept, making it a focal point for all the longing and the love raging in her soul. When she died, the unresolved feelings kept her spirit in the world and continued to cause her suffering. The Witcher's intervention helped Iris accept what had happened to her and her husband. When he asked for the rose, she agreed to give it to him, knowing that this would put a final end to her pain and suffering, and also her very existence. Lady of the Lake. Geralt had first encountered the Lady of the Lake when his search for what had been stolen from Kermoren took him to the village known as Murky Waters. There a mysterious female being dwelled in the murky depths of the village's namesake waters and watched over the residents living on the shores. Such was their esteem for their underwater guardian that they erected a monument in her honor. The Lady of the Lake once had many knights in her service, but they had all died, as valiant knights tend to do during campaigns in far-off lands. She now lived in near solitude, so she was glad to accept Geralt's company, the Witcher being someone she liked and respected. Once the Witcher had believed the Lady of the Lake was some kind of a local goddess, but the reunion at Lake Clavie made him realize that she did not dwell only in murky waters. Instead, the Lady of the Lake calls home any place where virtue and chivalry are honored. Milton de Peyrac-Peyran was a baron from Toussaint and a member of Anna Henrietta's inner circle of knights. This good-humored nobleman never met an overloaded banquet table he failed to unload of its burdens, nor did he ever shirk from a fight against heavily armed bandits and other enemies of the duchy. Geralt had met Milton years ago under very peculiar circumstances that deserve to be recounted properly and at length. Their roads crossed again when Milton came to the Witcher as the Duchess's envoy to ask our hero to journey with him to Toussaint. Milton made for good company. Was he also a good man? That I do not know. Geralt told me later some incidents from his past gnawed on his conscience. We shall never know precisely what moral burdens he carried, for Milton de Peyrac-Peyran perished in the palace gardens, the beast's fourth victim. May he rest in peace. Olgierd von Everec. To this day, I do not know what caused Geralt to inquire after the contract posted by Olgierd von Everec, that famed Witcher curiosity, an ominously light coin pouch, or perhaps it was some other, more nefarious force. Whatever the impulse, Geralt had decided to visit the locally infamous nobleman and pursue the bounty on the sewer monster. From the very first encounter, Geralt knew Olgierd was a unique character. He led an informal band who worshipped the ground he walked on, though he clearly was of a different sort than they, educated, a lover of art, and an adherent to a certain noble code. Yet Geralt also perceived something indefinable within the man, something that he would later call a void, crying out to be filled. Geralt later returned to the estate, where he had first met Olgierd and his band, and found the place in flames. He soon learned that the property did not in fact belong to Olgierd, but he had merely been commandeered by the ataman and his men, who then went a touch overboard in their carousing. Olgierd did not begrudge them their pyromanic over-exuberance, but the murder of the manor's lord he considered one cruelty too far, and ordered the wrongdoer beheaded. Geralt entered the stage in the middle of the execution. In the tumult that followed, he made a startling discovery. Olgierd von Everec was immortal, and immortality was but a start of the surprising revelations about Olgierd. Master Mirror had revealed that the two had signed a contract. In exchange for regaining his lost status and wealth, Olgierd had promised Mirror something very personal. What exactly, Geralt did not yet know. The contract had a strange clause before it could come to be completed, he had and before Master Mirror could collect his due, he had to fulfill Olgierd's 3 wishes. He could not do it personally, however, but needed instead to make use of a proxy. His choice for that role? Geralt, who in this way was drawn in a personal settlement between a powerful immortal nobleman and the mysterious Gaunter Odin. Upon hearing Geralt would be the one to carry out his requests, Olgierd wasted no time and issued him his first challenges: to bring him the house of Maximilian Borsodi and to show his brother Vladimir the time of his life. Granting Olgierd's wishes had proven difficult but rewarding for Geralt, and Geralt now knew a great deal more about the unusual nobleman, and the story that unfolded could have jerked tears from a Cyclops. Once upon a time, Olgierd fell hopelessly in love with Iris, a successful young lady from a well-off family. Her parents accepted the proposal of marriage, and all seemed well for a happy ending, when a storm of misfortune suddenly broke over the von Everec family. A chain of bad decisions and a few years of bad harvests have left the once wealthy family deeply in debt. The Borsodis purchased the debt, and with their brutal enforcement of its terms, drove the von Everecs into utter bankruptcy. After this, Iris's parents changed their mind about their daughter's future husband, revoking their approval of Olgierd and betrothing Iris to an Ophiri prince who had come to study in Oxenfurt. Out of desperation, Olgierd turned to Master Mirror and soon won back his coin, influence, and most importantly his betrothed. All seemed well until he discovered his wishes' unwanted side effect. His heart was slowly hardening into stone. Now the Witcher was on the verge of bringing the pact between Olgierd and Master Mirror to completion. Did this mean everything would soon be as it once was? Geralt was not sure. One question kept nagging him. What was that something very personal which Gaunter Odin intended to collect from Olgierd? Once Geralt realized that Master Mirror was playing for the highest of stakes, Olgierd von Everec's soul, he decided he could not stand idly by, and instead he found a way to cheat the demonic being and win Olgierd back his soul. Freed from the pact and his heart restored, Olgierd thanked Geralt and gave him his sword, a souvenir which had been in his family for generations, then walked off into the sunset. Oriana. During the Ciri organized by the Mandragora, Geralt met Oriana, a valued patroness of the local artists. There was something about the woman that made most who met her feel somewhat ill at ease. She could not break the Witcher's iron-hard self-composure, of course, but she did give him the impression that she was no normal aristocrat, and his impressions are usually spot on. Palmerin the Lunafall. Not all knights errant in Toussaint were embodiments of virtue, but if I had to choose one among them who did personify their chivalric creed, it would be Palmerin the Lunafall. He was the most admirable. He is all more admirable for the fact that years ago he was no stranger to the pleasures of eating, drinking, and making merry in a variety of fashions. With time, however, he abandoned vice and drew closer to the knightly ideal. Geralt realized that when Palmerin came to him as an envoy from Anna Henrietta, the old-fashioned and somewhat naive knight immediately made a good impression on him, for while he did take the formalities and courtesies a tad too seriously, he was anything but pompous or grandiose. Professor Shakestock. Geralt was racking his brains for a way to defeat Master Mirror when Shani came to his rescue. She knew of a professor from the Oxenfurt Academy who had spent years scrutinizing every manifestation of black magic, and surely would now be able to help. Unfortunately, the witch hunters had decided the professor's knowledge was best used for their goals and their goals only, and had placed guards outside his home. Officially he was a free man, but in reality, no one had entered or left his house without their permission. The professor told Geralt of the long hours he had spent scouring old tomes for accounts of Count Rodim, alias Master Mirror. He had been set on this trial by Olgierd von Everec, who paid him handsomely for his labors. This research had borne fruit in the form of a great many secrets about the mysterious Odim, including a possible way to outsmart him. Sadly, however, the professor did not live to see if his trick would work, for he made one step outside the runic circle drawn on the floor of his residence and died immediately. We will never know whether this was accidental or deliberate. By the time Geralt met him, he had become a tired and tormented wreck who just might have considered death a relief. Quinto. Geralt had taken on a mad assortment of tasks in his life, many of which strayed far beyond his core trade as a monster hunter. Recruiting a team to break into a vault at the Borsodi's auction house, however, stood out as atypical even against this motley backdrop. One of the shady characters the Witcher was told would make a good candidate was Quinto, the most famed safecracker north of the Yaruga. Quinto gave proof his reputation was well deserved. He opened the cage in which the group of mercenaries led by Hans of Cidaris held him, using only a fishbone. After this feat, the Witcher had no doubt that Quinto would be the man to fill the gap in the break-in crew. Quinto demonstrated the craftsmanship of a true artist by tickling open the auction house vault doors in a blink of an eye. He also demonstrated the rotten cynicism of a true lowlife by displaying not one speck of loyalty to his companions. In the fight which took place in the auction house's basement, he stood against the Witcher and paid for this mistake with his life. Stranger. Geralt's auction-going experience ended in catastrophe. Not only he was summarily tossed out on his venerable Witcher rear end, he also failed to learn anything about Maximilian's house. Then, while pondering his next step, he was approached by a mysterious stranger. This man did not say who he was, where he was from, how he knew of the Witcher, or how he had found him. All he would reveal is that he could help Geralt gain access to the auction house vault without asking the owner's permission. The stranger proposed that they meet somewhere more secluded, so he might explain his plan in greater detail. The mysterious man was planning a break-in to rob the auction house. He claimed the subject of Olgierd's wish, Maximilian's house, was to be found inside the vault. Though the Witcher usually refused to engage in criminal activities, he came to the conclusion that he had no choice but to agree to work with this secretive gentleman. During the break-in, the mysterious stranger was revealed to be none other than Horst Borsodi's brother, Ewald, who had disappeared years earlier. This family reunion was no joyous event, however. Rather than grasp hands and pat shoulders, the brothers immediately reached for each other's throats. Siana. Sylvia Anna, a lovely name, don't you think? This beauty should come as no surprise, given it is a name of a daughter of a duke and the sister of a duchess, yet the fate of Siana, as her intimates called her, the fate that she met was not as beautiful as one might have suspected for one so well born, though as it turns out, she had been born rather inopportunely. She came into this world during an eclipse, and thus fell victim to the panic surrounding the curse of the Black Sun, which was said to affect young girls of ruling families in similar circumstances. Though Geralt had serious doubts whether this curse truly existed, many claimed it caused horrible mutations, which filled its victims with cruelty and a desire to kill. Siana's parents certainly seemed to be among the believers in the curse, for they deemed her too dangerous to be allowed to remain at court and forced her into exile. Siana fled to Nazair and soon, for all intents and purposes, dropped off the face of the planet. Anna Henrietta, full of sisterly love and compassion, spent years mourning the absence of Siana, who had officially been declared missing and presumed dead. When she surfaced again, however, the reunion was not one of familial joy. Siana despised Anna Henrietta and did not wish to speak of her or to her. The reluctance, however, might have had something to do with the fact that moments earlier, Sienna had been unmasked as a murderer. The Black Cat and the Dog. Tasked with finding the violet rose Olgierd gave his wife, Geralt travelled to the von Everec's abandoned family estate, which had become home to a host of strange and horrifying creatures. Among these were a black cat and dog, who, though able to speak, chose to say very little about themselves. Geralt surmised that they were demons from another sphere who had been summoned by black magic, trapped in animal bodies, and bound to serve Iris von Everec. The enigmatic duo trusted Geralt would help them regain their lost freedom, even though he himself had no idea how he might go about doing such a thing. Later, when Geralt encountered Iris von Everec's memories, he learned Olgierd had summoned the otherworldly cat and dog to keep his wife company in his absence, an idea only a man with a heart of stone could have imagined working. The two creatures remained loyal to Iris even after she died and transformed into an enraged ghost, but they never loved her nor felt any sympathy for her fate, for such feelings did not seem part of their nature and did not reside even in the darkest corners of their souls. In the end, the strange cat and dog regained their longed-for freedom when Iris von Everec gave Geralt the violet rose, thereby ending her existence. With their lady gone, the dog and cat's service ended, and they were free again long last. The Hermit at Lac Clavie. The hermit who lived on the Isle of the Lac Clavie had become the guardian of the Duchess's 5 principal virtues. The virtuous man watched over the boulders on which the virtues had been engraved, and put any knights who came by through a trial to prove that they embodied them. When the Witcher arrived at the Isle and met with the hermit, it seemed to him that he was not the first encounter. Only later did he find out how right he was. The hermit turned out to be the Lady of the Lake, a mysterious being whom Geralt had once met in murky waters. After Geralt passed the hermit's trials, this holy man changed form and showed him his true face, that bestowed upon Geralt a gift, the sword Erondite. The Unseen Elder. Geralt was as intrigued as I was, and as I imagine you shall be, to learn that a higher vampire society is organized in a strict hierarchy based on age. The older the vampire, the greater his say in the matters, and the stricter the punishment for going against his will. One extremely elder vampire lived in Beauclair, in the cave where he had been deposited during the conjunction of the spheres. Geralt and Regis decided that they had to go to him to get his help in finding Dettlaff. The only problem was that the more ancient members of the vampiric race were not very, amenable to company. This particular elder so deeply disliked visitors that Regis trembled at the very thought of having to disturb his peace. Geralt had a difficult decision to make. Should he risk a visit to the elder's domain, or try to find Sienna? Vivienne de Tabriz was Anna Henrietta's lady-in-waiting. She was a tight-lipped, secretive, inaccessible person, but her beauty fascinated men. Geralt saw proof of that when he took a contract from Guillaume, who was in love with her and suspected she might be afflicted by a curse. In order to get an audience with her, Geralt had to take part in a knight's tourney, where Vivienne was acting as a patroness. By following Vivienne and examining the evidence, Geralt discovered that Guillaume was right. Vivienne had indeed been struck by a powerful curse before she was even born. This curse caused her to turn into a bird whenever the moon was out. Geralt listened to the history of the curse and then offered to try to lift it. He warned her that it might not be a simple matter. The curse could be transferred upon another, but Vivienne did not want to hear of that. It could be removed entirely, but then it was possible that Vivienne would only have a few years left to live. Geralt decided to tell Guillaume what he had learned. Guillaume offered to help lifting the curse, and declared he was willing to take the burden upon himself. Thanks to the information Geralt had gathered, Guillaume convinced Vivienne to let him take the curse upon himself. According to Geralt, the spell would have been much weaker once transferred, and Vivienne believed Guillaume had the best of intentions and decided to trust him. The three of them performed the ritual, lifting the curse from Vivienne. As for Guillaume, he noticed no immediate changes. Vladimir von Everec. Geralt was tasked with finding Vladimir von Everec and showing him the time of his life. This would have been one of the Witcher's least remarkable missions, had not Vladimir been dead for years at this point. The mysterious Master Mirror did not think that much of an obstacle, however. He handed Geralt a vial of von Everec blood and told him an incantation which would summon Vladimir from the grave. Geralt thus journeyed to the von Everec family crypt and sought out the younger von Everec's place of burial. Geralt's meeting with Vladimir began with a fight against other deceased members of the von Everec clan. Only after they were defeated did Vlad reveal himself, explaining that he had refused to fight alongside his dead kin, as he had never been particularly fond of them. Overall, Olgierd's brother cut a strange figure, even for a ghost. He showed hints of noble refinement, but often his mannerisms resembled that of a lifelong brawler or hooligan, no doubt because he had spent so much of his living years raiding and marauding with a band of rough characters. One thing was certain: Vladimir liked to have a good time, and had found death sorely lacking in quality entertainment. His demands for his night of fun were simple. He mainly wanted to get well and thoroughly plastered, and, well, let us say that dead man's inability to enter into relations with the fairer sex had tormented him terribly. All in all, after hearing Geralt relate Vladimir's complaints about the afterlife, I fear death all the more. Vladimir jumped into Geralt's body, and together they accompanied Shani to her friend's wedding. There Vladimir found more than enough entertainment to scratch his itch. He dove for slippers in a pond, played Gwent, drank enough for 3 horses, chased pigs, and even managed to steal a kiss from Shani. When midnight struck, the capping ceremony began, and Vladimir von Everec's time among the living came to an end. Yet the Witcher's skin had felt so good on him, he had no intention of yielding it. Only the appearance of Master Mirror finally forced Vladimir back whence he came. In Geralt's account, Master Mirror caused Vlad's ghost a great deal of pain while banishing him. I do not know exactly how one can cause a disembodied spirit pain, but clearly Master Mirror knew a way. He was strange that one, even thinking about him now, gives me goosebumps. Okay, apparently I got some new Bestiary entries. Just one, for the proto-fledders. Never seen a vampire like that in my life. Geralt of Rivia, Witcher. Proto-fledders are relatives of the fledders, which came from the world of the higher vampires to our own during the conjunction of the spheres. The members of these species are characterized by their considerable strength and agility, as well as a strange glow they emit, a trait most likely tied to their otherworldly nature. Proto-fledders had never had a significant contact with the outside world, having spent their entire time on our planet in the Unseen Elder's cave, whose atmosphere is very similar to that of their home world. Well, then how did the guy write the book about them, if he never met them? Question for the ages. But that's enough for this one. The next one will probably be the last one. All for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.